All right, you guys. So I'm just going to introduce this first GUI example just so you know what's going on. So essentially what you're going to do is you're going to take at least this two-file example. That's just if you're a beginner and you're overwhelmed, just start with this, okay? And that's going to be a soft introduction. All right, so there's really two things going on here. We've got a JFrame and we've got a JPanel. So what's really going on is the JFrame is going to open just a pop-up window, kind of like how this is a pop-up window or this is a pop-up window. So essentially this is a JFrame, and then everything going on inside, all these buttons and words and text and all that, that would be the JPanel. So all the visuals that you can see on the inside of this frame is the JPanel, and then the actual frame itself is the JFrame, okay? This package, the Java Swing package, has been around for years and is very well polished. Now, it's not as robust as, the newer packages like the Java FX package, which can do more, but this is just so filled out and polished that anything you want to do, you can do it, and there's a million examples on the internet. So this is a great way to start as a beginner. Okay, if we want to make a JFrame, the first thing we do is we import from the Swing package the JFrame class, and now we can go ahead and make a new JFrame. So we go, okay, let's make a new JFrame called frame, and all we do is put a little title. So I don't know, we'll call this Mr. D's Super, I can't do a single thing. Let's just say Mr. D loves art, okay? All right. And then we're going to make a JPanel. Now we'll get to what that class is, but we're going to instantiate that and we're going to call it the canvas. So essentially we're putting a canvas, like a painting, inside of our frame, okay? So we make our JPanel. We didn't send it any starting information, but we totally could have made an instructor or a constructor where we send it lots of information to set up. And then what we do is we add these 4 lines. And you're not going to change these 4 lines at all. Essentially, we put a little X up at the top, so we can close the window, so we're not just trapped in a forever loop that we have to like Alt Control Delete or something to get out of. So we make it very easy for us to close the window. We add our picture into the frame. So we say, hey frame, the JFrame, go ahead and add this JPanel, right? That's the name of our JPanel. And then we pack it all together, and then we open it up and make it visible for the user, okay? So we could play with this class a little, but for the most part, as a beginner, you're not going to change a single thing in here. Maybe you change this title, and that's what's going to show up here. So the title on this one is the path of where this file is on my computer, okay? But other than that, you're not going to change this main class at all, okay? We can just save that and leave it, okay? Then we go over to JPanel. This is where you're going to really play around, okay? So first, we have to import the JPanel, if nothing else. And then we simply import the color class so we can have colors, right? Blue, red, green, any RGB value. And then the graphics class lets us make shapes, okay? So we can make a circle, rectangle, we could do any polygon, we could do all sorts of things. I'm just listing the most common ones we're going to use. And then we do the dimensions just so we can set the dimensions of the windows. The very first thing we do is just this set the dimensions. You can set it to anything you want. 800 by 600 is just a nice default, but you can make a tiny little window that's 100 by 100 just by going width, height. Now notice it always goes width first, height second, just because X and Y always go in that order. So just like we go X and Y, then we go the X width and the Y height. Okay, so if we want it back to 800 by 600, let's just leave it there. And so now that we've set the dimensions, and again, you don't really need to change that at all, then all we're going to do is use this paint component to draw stuff. So paint component gets called automatically. This, just leave it in there. Essentially what it does is it says redraw the entire JPanel. So like whatever was underneath, we're just going to completely put a whole new painting over it. It doesn't matter right now, but when we get to animations, it will have an effect, and you can choose whether or not to include it, okay? But essentially what we got is import these 4 things, set the dimension, and then inside the paint component, which gets called automatically, so when we open up the JPanel, it's going to call on this once to draw stuff. And so all we've done is 3 lines of code. Okay, you could leave everything else in this class totally unchanged, and all you're going to do is I mean, this is just like we're back in Snap or Scratch, right? So here we just make a color, and then here we set the, I'm going to call it a pen, to that color, right? So here we've made our own green from the color class. This is an RGB value, so red, green, blue. So, and I could just open a new Google Chrome window, and I could go RGB color picker. Okay, and here I could just literally like pick. I could be like, I don't know, I want that. Now I want a pink. I want a really light pink. And then right here, it'll give me the RGB values. And so I could just take those and paste them in here. And now I have that color pink. So it's really easy to go online and find any color you want. Be like, ooh, I want a tree that's got this, maybe like, this is the green I want, or maybe a little brighter. That's crazy, maybe darker, right? And you can find any color and take those RGB values. So you use a constructor of the color class with 3 RGB values to make a color, right? I called it color green, real straightforward. And then we set, and so this graphics object G is like our pen. And so all we do is say, hey, pen, set your color to my green that I made. Okay. And then lastly, in this one, we are going to use one of the common methods of the graphics class. Now, I don't think I have, let's see, I do. Oh, I do have the graphics. So these are the slides that go with this. And I have a bunch of the common methods from the graphics class. So here's like set the color, draw a rectangle. So that's an unfilled, just rectangular frame. And then here's a filled in rectangle. So solid color, like rectangular blue block. And then here's an empty oval. So just the outside of the oval. And then here's a filled in oval. So an oval could be a circle if the width and the height are the same, or it could be like a really elongated one. And then we've also got draw a line, right, from an XY to another XY. And then we've got draw a string. So that's draw like the word dog on the screen, right? So on top of a button, you might want to put a word to say what the button is. And then there's tons of others, right? Polygon is another really common one that uses arrays. Okay, so we're going back to our graphics. So here we're going to draw empty oval at, and XY is 100, 300, and then with width and height, so width is, well, let's just do W equals 100 and height equals 50. Okay, now you're like, well, I don't know what these pixels are, okay? So for the pixels, the frame we're opening up is 800 by 600. So that means 800 wide and 600 down. And then I'm going to go back to the graphics slides. So pixels on the screen is written like a book, okay? So it's written, it starts at 0 at the top. It writes the first line, and then it goes to the next row of pixels and writes the next one. So Y values actually start at 0, and then the line after that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, all the way down here to 600 will be at the bottom, because we said it was 800 wide and 600 long. So actually, pixel 600 would be out of the screen. The 600 rows will be from 0 to 599 would be the last one. And then 600 exists. You could draw stuff out of the JFrame, right? You could draw stuff down here, and then when we get to animations, you can move it into the screen. So just like in Snap or Scratch, right? Your object could have a position outside of the screen and still do calculations on it. It's only going to be drawn when we have it in our range, right? And same thing with X. It's going to start at 0, go to the last pixel that you could see would be 799, and then 800 would be right here on the outer edge, okay? So 0, 0 on the top right, and then positive X goes right, positive Y goes down. Okay, so let's go back to our example one more time. Whoa, that was not our example. There we go. All right, so all we've done here is don't change the imports. Okay, set the dimensions, you choose whatever width and height you want your frame to be. We made a color, we set the pen's color, and we drew an empty oval, okay? So I'm gonna save this, I'm gonna right click, I'm gonna open that folder in my command prompt window, or if you're on Replit, you just hit play, right? That's okay too. And then here what I'm gonna do is Java compile every.java file, and then I'm gonna run my main, okay? And there we go, we open this up. Now notice this is like stuck in a forever loop. I can't type in here while this window is open. So if I want to like make some changes and redo it, then I need to actually close this window. So this is like a forever loop trapping the console. So now that let's open up the console and see, as soon as I close this, you can see that ends and I'm able to, it hasn't happened yet. Oh, there we go. I was clicked off. So as soon as you click back on this, it ends and now I have access to, I can run it again. So notice, let's just look at our pixel locations here. Okay, so let's open that up and then open this. So we've got a green. Okay, it's not very bright. There's no red, there's no blue, and only halfway on. So all these RGB values go from 0 to 255. So this is a pretty dark green, not a lot of light. If this was at 255, it would be like bright neon, all the green pixel light up. And then we set the color to green. We drew an oval that's 100 pixels over and 300 down. And the way it draws this is it makes a rectangle. So it starts the rectangle right here at 100, 300. And then it draws a rectangle that's 100 wide and 50 down. And then inscribes an oval that like touches the top and bottom and left and right. So actually the position of this object is right here. This is 100 and 300, which would be the top left corner of the box. Okay, so now we can add to it. I don't know, let's instead of draw oval, let's fill the oval, and let's make this a tree. So I'm also going to go color brown. Okay, equals new, and what the heck, I don't know the RGB values of brown, so let's find it. So it's usually kind of a reddish. So let's go to like a red, kind of go down, I don't know. Like, no, that's not, that kind of looks like it. Maybe let's go more orangish, there we go. Okay, so there's kind of like a brown we like. So I'm going to take these values right here, and that's going to be my new color RGB values. Okay, so make brown color. Okay, now we need to set the color. So we go g.setColor, and I'm going to set it to color brown. Okay, and then we've got, whoops, that's a method, we're done. Okay, and now we need to draw something. So I want to draw a rectangle. Okay, so I want to fill a rectangle, and I need to give it a position to draw it. Okay, because I want, and notice that I'm doing it before the circle. The reason is whatever you draw first is on bottom. The next thing you draw gets drawn on top of it. It would look funny if well, let's just do it. Okay, let's draw the trunk after the top of the tree and see how that looks. Okay, so I want to figure out the position, width, and height of my trunk. Okay, so I'm going to do a little mental math here on my picture. This is 100, 300, and then this is 100 wide. So the X here is 100. The X here is 200. So if I want my trunk to be somewhere in the middle and, I don't know, medium skinny, I want a value between 100 and 200, and I want it centered in there, okay? So let's say I'm going to start it at, I don't know, 130. I don't know what the Y position is yet. And if I want that to be centered, so between 100 and 200, that means there's 30 pixels on the left, and there's 30 pixels on the right. So that leaves, out of that 100 width, that leaves 40 pixels left over. So I'm going to say 40 width. So that should be centered mathematically. And then for the Y value, I don't know. So this was 50 tall. I want it to start somewhere around here. So in the middle of the tree. So in the middle of the tree was add a Y value of 300. And then it had a height of 50. So I'm going to say this starts at 325. Okay, that's right between the 300 and 350 Y values of this oval. So it starts in the middle. And then I want it to be, I don't know, like this was 50. Let's go another 50, another 50. So let's make it about 100 or 125 just to see what that looks like. Okay, so now we set it to brown and draw rectangle trunk. Right, so here's draw green top of tree, and here we're going to draw brown trunk of the tree. Okay, and they're both filled in. Let's save it. Let's now again, I can't type in here yet because I got to close this window first. A shortcut is you could go Control C and that's an interrupt. And so that just can't, all those keys were in the input buffer. All right, so now I'm going to go up to recompile. Oh, I missed a semicolon there. Okay, super common mistake, right? Nobody's ever done that before. Okay, let's up, recompile it. Okay, whoops, there we go. Now let's go Java main. And whoa, my gosh, it looks beautiful, except the trunk of the tree is in front, and it's probably too wide too. I think it'd look better if it was a little skinnier. So let's go back over here and make a few changes, okay? So one thing is, I want to draw the trunk of the tree first. Okay, so that way the green is on top. Okay, and we don't have that weird trunk sticking out. And then I got, like that 40 wide was too long. Let's make it just 20 wide. Okay, so out of that 100, remember when we looked at the picture, it was between 100 and 200? If I want it 20 wide out of from 100 to 200 X position, that means out of the 100, I've used 20 pixels. There's 80 left over, and so I want 40 on each side. So I'm going to start this at 140. It'll go 20 pixels, and then it'll have 40 left over on the other side. Okay, so let's save that. And you can play around with this. There's actually way better ways to code this. Like you could have a variable width, and then here you could go the X position plus, you know, and then it's like the whole like, you know, X range divided by 2 and use the width. And so there's some simple math you could do there, but I'm just eyeballing it now for the first one. Okay, let's recompile this. Let's draw it, and oh yeah, that is a way better tree. Okay, so then the key is moving forward, you could either just work in this one JPanel class, but better yet is start using your object-oriented programming. And what you could do is you could take all this and turn it into a tree class. Okay, so for example, whoops, let's undo that. Let's save. Let's just go to a new file. Okay, and what I could do is I could go, this is a public class called tree. And all I would do in here is I would say, well, what does the tree have, right? Do I want him to be able to set the colors? Do I want him to be able to change the size? No, I don't care about any of that. Let's just say they're going to make a few trees, right? The only thing that will be different about these trees is the position. So let's make a private int x and a private int y, right? So this would be how I would extend it. So the previous example is done. You could stop the video. But what we want to do is how we transition into a better model for this, right? Going forward. And so I'm just going to show you, you would make this class tree, which of course we need a constructor. So we'd say, okay, well, we have a public tree that would take in an X and a Y. So that way when we make our tree, we could set up the X position and the Y position. If you wanted to, you could go this dot X equals X, and we could have done it that way too. But we'll do Y equals underscore Y. Okay, all right, so we've set up the position. So now what we need is some public method that won't return anything, but that will draw stuff. So let's just call it draw me, right? So it'll draw this tree, okay? Or let's just even call it draw, okay? So if it's gonna draw, I mean, look at what we need, right? So if it's gonna draw, we need this graphics object G, and then we need this color class, and we need the graphics class. So let's go up here and let's take color and graphics. Okay, so that's what we need. All right, they're both from the AWT swing package. Okay, so let's go down here and we'll say, so at the top, all we need is color and graphics. Okay, we're going to take in a graphics object G. You can name it anything you want. I mean, we could have called this pen, right, if that's more useful. Okay, all right, so now what I want to do is take how we drew that tree, right? This was the tree we drew. Okay, and we're going to move it over here. We're going to say, well, it's already done. I already drew the tree. The only thing is now we want to draw it in terms of a location, a variable location. All right, so the top left of this shape would be at X. The smallest X value is 100. So to start, we're going to have, like, I'm just going to make a little note here. In our example, X was 100. And what was the smallest Y value, right? 325 or 300. So it looks like the top left of our tree was the top left of the oval at 100, 300. So this was the starting value, right? And so now we could write all of these in terms of the variable position. What that lets us do is move the tree around or draw two trees, one over here, one over there. So what I could do now is instead of having this be a hard-coded or right here first, the 100, 300, we just say draw this at XY. The width and height will be fixed. We won't be able to change the width and the height yet. I mean, you could build that in if you want. Okay, and then here, we had the trunk of the tree was at 100 plus 40 more. So we say started at X plus 40 pixels to the right. So wherever this top of the tree is, this is 40 pixels to the right. And then this one, same thing. Wherever the top of the tree is, this is at that same place plus 25 pixels below. And now we're set up. We're ready to go. The only difference is I changed the graphics name from G to Pen. So we could set that up really quick. Okay, so there we go. So now what we've got is a tree class where we could draw it at any different position, right? So I'm going to get rid of this. Okay, now let's go ahead and use this tree class. So what we could do is over here, we could say, well, let's make a tree object, okay? Let's call it, I don't know, tree 1. Let's even make 2 trees, okay? So there's a T1 and a T2, okay? Now we can't go is a new tree here because this isn't our main, right? This isn't actually running any code. If we try and do that, it's going to say like, well, when is that going to get executed? That's just floating out there. So we can declare variables up there, but the only thing we could do is set it to a constant. So we're not going to do that yet. We're just going to say there's a tree 1, and if it's easier for you to see, we could do tree 2 like this. And now here's where it gets clever. We say, okay, well, how could we call on the constructor of the tree to set it up, right? Like, how could we do that? Well, we say, okay, so when this class gets instantiated, so public myPanel, when it gets created, make sure you set up your trees. So over here in the main, when we make our JPanel, so we call on this constructor, that's when we set up the trees. We say, okay, T1 is a new tree. Let's set this one to be the same, 100, 300, okay? But then the tree 2, let's set this one to be a tree, and let's keep the Y value the same, but let's move it some pixels over, right? So the tree was 100 wide, so let's move this one 150 to the right. Okay, we'll keep it the same Y value. So it should just be 50 pixels apart. That should be good. Okay, let's even make a 3rd tree. Why the heck not? This is fun. We're making a little forest. This is like we're Bob Ross. I've always wanted to be Bob Ross. Oh yeah, here we go. Let's make another little tree. So we went 150 pixels. Let's go 150 more. So that's 300, 400, 300. Oh yeah, let's just Bob Ross this thing out. Okay, so far we've made 3 tree objects, but we haven't used them. So down here in the paint component, which is called 1, so it draws the whole screen, all we need to do is say, hey, tree number 1, go ahead and draw yourself. But if I just do this, it doesn't have access to the graphics object that's rendering on the screen. It doesn't have access to the pen. So what I've got to do is when I call to draw, I've got to send it access to the graphics object so it can draw on our JPanel, right? So all I do is say, hey, take this graphic object here. I'm going to hand you the pen, you draw yourself, tree. And when you're done, I'm going to have tree 2 go ahead and draw itself. And I'm going to have tree 3 go ahead and draw itself. And we should have a nice little forest. Let's see if this works, okay? So we've got our trees. We set them up. We draw them. Okay, let's save it. Let's go over here and let's save this as tree.java. We're good to go. Okay, let's go over here. And oh my gosh, look at this. I can't type here. So I got to go Control C. That interrupts it, or I could have just closed that window. Let's go compile all of them. No errors. That's a good sign. Let's try and run it. Oh, my beautiful forest. Wow. Now, if that's not art. Look at, Mr. D loves art. This just makes me smile, you guys. All right. Good luck with creating your art, you guys.